We're back, and it's COMP213, Intro to Game and Simulation, and it's Week 10, Lesson 10, Part 4. We just created a little character, and we've got orthographic mode. We're in orthographic mode to see this guy as an example, right? If I go to camera mode, so I go to, and I go to camera mode, and I'm going to scroll out so I can see that the guy is in camera mode. This is the guy, this is the way he'll look, right? If I kind of go out of camera mode, you see the camera is like right there. It's like, it's right on his face, right? So I kind of want to pull back a little bit because it's too close. So how do I do that? Well, first of all, I'm going to bring my view inside, and I want to click lock camera to view, right? And go into camera mode. So now my camera mode, I'm going to kind of scroll out a little bit. So my camera, normally what I would do is with my lock camera to view, right? So here's my front ortho, right? I can see that I'm a little bit off when it comes to what my camera looks like. Once I do lock camera to view, I'm in trouble, right? Because I'm changing the position of my camera. I want my camera to be as front center as possible. So let's undo that change. Let's just go back, because this is normally what we would do, because we're working in 2D, and 2D is more difficult than anything else, right? To get aligned properly. So first of all, we're going to go back into our front face, and you see our camera's off. So I want to put my camera back on alignment, right? So how do I do this? My camera, here's my camera, right? I want it, when I click here, I don't want it to look like this, right? Because that's wrong. I want it to look like this, but with my camera properly aligned. So I'm going to go View, Align Active Camera to View, and boom, we're back to normal again, right? Okay. But if I want my camera to pull back, what do I do, right? Well, I have to select my camera. And if I go to my camera itself, you can see I've got a size of my camera and everything else. I've got my orthographic scale, right, is here, which is very, very important. And if I go to my camera gives me, this is my rendering mode. So I don't want to, this allows me to render my characters. Sorry, go back to camera mode. I want to pull back though, and if you notice my resolution on my embedded player is 1920 by 1080. My resolution on my myself, when I embed in a standalone player, 640 by 480. That's good here for this stuff. And what I definitely need to be is on GLSL mode. I can't be on Blender game. So that's one thing I forgot to change, guys. When I save my game, it's got to be GLSL. If I click camera again, one thing I can do is I want to change this the size of my sensor. So if I go like way down here to lower than 30, my sensor size changes. So that doesn't really do anything. I got to go back to 32. And if I want to undo, I can always undo that. So 21, then back to 32. That's where it was. Now, what about if I change my orthographic scale? What does this do? So if I change my orthographic scale, I go, whoa, look at this. Kind of whaps them off. Or if I go way over here, right, which is what I want to do. So if I change my orthographic scale, it kind of zooms in and out. But that's what my camera's doing, actually. So I want to kind of put them down so the character is about this big. So I'm going to change my scale numerically to 15. So you should change your scale to 15. Now, what does this look like from a perspective mode? Look, here he is inside the camera, right? Well, that's cool and all, but that's not really what I want. He's inside my camera, which is a bad thing. What I want to do, right? That's one thing we can do. Is first of all, let's go back to that other scale I had. So if I go back to, I want to show you what happens with the camera when I change my orthographic scale from the side here. So I'm going to go undo, undo. Right, so my orthographic scale should go back to 7.1314. But I want to pull my camera back. How do I pull my camera back? Well, I just pull on it like this. I pull it back all the way. Right, now if I go back to camera mode, right, he's still in front of me. Right, let's go back to the side view. Right, and scroll back out, and I'm going to pull my camera out more with the green arrow. So let's pull my camera way back more, and I go back to camera mode, and he's still in front of me. Take a look. How come this is happening, right? When this is moving out. I'm way out here, right? Way out here. Well, my guy's way out here, right? When you're in orthographic mode, there's no perspective. So if I click on perspective, I go back to perspective for a second, right? My camera's way out here, but it's very, very small. Take a look how small it is in perspective mode. If I go back to orthographic mode, my camera becomes huge, massive, right? In fact, I do want to pull it back though, because I think, you know, the guy being inside my character in my camera is pretty bad. So I'm going to pull it back a little bit more, so it's way over here, right? And when I go back to 0 for camera mode, he still looks like he's here. Now I'm going to change my orthographic scale to 15. And now he's back to there. Now, if you notice what happens is, this is still here, he's still out there, right? But my camera's way closer because I'm in the orthographic mode. Okay, why did I do all that? Because I want to play with this guy out of camera mode. So here's, I'm going to click on the dude, right? I'm here, I'm going to work, from now on, I'm going to work in this mode, right, as much as possible. Okay, he's in the middle of my screen, yeah? Let's check this. So I'm going to say Shift S, and I'm going to make sure that my cursor is to center. Okay, that's the first thing I want to make sure. My cursor's in the center. Now I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to create a new mesh, which is I'm going to create a new cube mesh. Right, there's my cube. And I'm going to pull this cube down so that the cube is underneath the character somewhere. Now, if you notice, my cube is black. Why is my cube black? Because there's no lighting. Remember, in 2D mode, right, I can apply lighting, but it doesn't really make a difference. I have to, my light has to physically be in the scene for me to see this stuff. So if I go back into orthographic mode for us, right, my light is way over here. For me to have lighting, my lighting has to be way over here for it to be lit. Like, in fact, it's like got to be almost in front of the camera, like right here. And I can project light on the guy too. He won't have shadows, but definitely I want my ground to have some kind of lighting. So if I pull, the closer I pull my ground, my object, my light, in front of, between the camera and the dude, right, I can do that. I can project some light. And I want to kind of put it in there so it's close enough to the ground so I can see, right? But it does produce a little bit of shadows just for extra effect. Let's go back to 0. There it is. So there's my ground. It looks like it's interesting. It's got like a little bit of gradient now. It's not completely white. I could make this shadeless, but it's less interesting in my opinion. Okay, let's add some material to the ground. So I'm going to click new material. I'm going to go click on diffuse, and we'll make this piece of the ground green. All right, so just like kind of a green color. If you want to match what I have from a hexadecimal perspective, it is 4A E746 for my green color. 4A E746, if you want to match up with me. Okay, so this is my ground. My ground looks like a block right now, right? We're going to change that. How do we change this block to make it look normal, right? Well, there's a couple things we can do. One of them is I'm going to lengthen the block by expanding it, right? So I'm going to press, you know, kind of this extrusion, this transformation manipulator, and I'm going to transform it so that it's just longer this way. So my ground, he's on the entire ground here. Take a look. There we go. Now he's kind of out of the picture right now, but that's okay. And you know what? I think it's too thick, the ground, right? So I'm going to kind of make the grass so that it's thinner, like almost like a platform. So it looks like it's a platform. And I'm going to move it up, right, so that it's underneath his feet. There we go. So he's going to fall a little bit when he hits the ground. Okay, and maybe underneath the ground, right? And again, what it looks like is like this. Take a look. This is what it actually looks like. So if I go into 3D perspective mode, right? From a perspective mode, it looks like this. The cube is physically on this ground, right? This is what it really looks like. Okay? And the ground, well, this is important to do. What I recommend to you is that it doesn't stay as thick as this. It goes a little bit thicker from the top. So if I go to the top for the platform itself, and I change to the manipulator arm to arrows that kind of make it thicker, I can make it a little bit thicker than the cube, because this is my cube, right, and this is the ground. See, the ground is here, my cube is here. They're on top of each other, right? My cube is going to be a character. So when I go into physics, I'm going to change my cube from static, right, to character. I also want to make him an actor, right? And I also want to, for now, I want to kind of add collision bounds to him. guess what? My collision bounds are a cube for this guy, which is perfect, right? And if I want to see my collision bounds, if I go to game and show physics visualization, right? So game, show physics visualization, and I can see that when I go into P, right, that my character sits on top of my object. Right, now again, I'm in perspective mode. I'm going to go back into ortho mode in a second. I'm just doing perspective mode so you can see where my character is. Right? Let's take off that physics visualization for a second. And now I'm going to go back into my camera. So here's my camera, right? And when I press P, my character kind of is ready to go, and I can move him around the object, right? Or the ground. This is the ground, right? Okay, a couple things I want to do. I want to make it so that there is another object. Look what it's looking like right now. I want to make another object that's underneath this ground, but I don't want to move it around. So I'm going to kind of grab the ground. I'm going to press Shift D, and I'm going to move it across the Z-axis. I'm going to restrict it on the Z-axis. I'm going to move it down a little bit of a step. Right? Zoom in. So I've got two grounds now, right? One is here, which we're going to rename as ground. And I might as well do some renaming right now. I'm going to kind of click on the player and call him player, right? And the ground on the bottom, I'm going to kind of change the my material from green, or grass, which is what it is. I'm going to change it. I'm going to add a new material in there. And I'm going to add material on the ground to soil or dirt. Let's call it dirt. Here's my dirt material. And my dirt material, what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to just change the diffuse pattern to kind of a brown and make it a little darker. So it's kind of a dark brown material. I'm taking away the specularity because I don't want any specularity on that at all. So I'm not going to make it very specular. And I'm going to make this one kind of up, and I'm going to take this one away. There we go. So this is what it looks like now. So I've got kind of a brown material and this other one. Go into edit mode. Actually, first of all, I want to go into change my manipulator arms so they butt against each other. So I kind of drag this one so that it kind of connects with the other one. There we are. It's connecting. And now in edit mode, right, I'm going to go into Z mode, so transparency mode. I'm going to go into tab into Vertex Mode, right, and I'm going to go into the bottom, and I'm just going to take away my screen so you can see what I'm doing here. I'm going to go into front mode and front perspective mode and zoom in, right? And what I want to do is I want to kind of select the bottom and drag it down so it's below my camera like this. So I go B-select mode, grab the bottom vertices, and then drag these ones down so that it kind of goes below my camera, right? Like this. So when I look at camera mode now, this is my camera, I see my ground. As an example, I see the bottom of my ground having this brown platform. If I go back into, so I can see, I'm going to go in edit mode, object mode. I'm going to go back into texture, or material, and this is what it looks like, right? So I have my character selected, and then I have my ground, and I have my grass, my dirt, and my grass. Okay? If I press P for play, he falls on the ground. It looks like this. This is what the guy looks like right now. And if I want to move him, right, I want to start him on the left-hand side. I want to grab the red manipulator arm and move him to the left, so he's left of center. Right, so he's going to move to the right. Okay, so he's over here. I'm going to press play. He's there on the ground. He's actually touching the ground right now, remember, because our physics are working, right? And a good example of that would be this. Look, if I kind of bring this guy up and I move him up here, and then I press play, he falls on the ground, right? So he's ready to go. I'm ready to start doing my physics, right? Look, watch. Oop. and play. It's like on the ground. So it looks like his 2D character, right? You can't see this, the box. You've got your collision detection going on, right, because it's working. Now we're going to add in some logic bricks. Okay, so let's do the logic brick side. I want to go into my logic editor for this one. Okay, so let's do, instead of putting my logic bricks underneath like we did last time, I want to go into my logic editor, so game logic. And if you notice right now, I'm looking at it from a top-down perspective. This won't do. I want to kind of look at it from the side, the same side that we're looking at everything from. And I want to kind of put my material on so I can see the guy. And I really want to go into camera mode so I can see what I normally see with him from a logic brick perspective. You see? Like this. Okay, one thing I don't need the scripting area because I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to kind of kill the scripting area by doing this. So this is what it looks like. And on the bottom, I have most of the things I need. I have my game properties on the left. I'm going to be working a lot in here over the next hour or so, right? Because we're about 5:40. Guys, and by the way, I have a hard stop at like 6:20, but I got to be out of here today. Just FYI. I know last time we kind of went over like 7 o'clock. Today, no, not going to happen. Okay, so how do we do this? So I want to make this guy, remember, do I need controls for him to go forward and back now? The only control I need is on the x-axis. It's going to go right on the x-axis and back on the other x-axis. So let's add in a keyboard center, another couple keyboard centers. So my right and left is going to be my D and my A keys. And my, I'm also going to attach my arrow keys to this as well. Why not? I can use both, right? So this is my D key. I'm going to call this D key, just so we don't get confused. I'm going to zoom in here so you can see what I'm doing. There it is. Here's my D key. And I'm also going to add another sensor, another keyboard sensor that I'm going to call my A key. Here's my A key and press A here. So I got my D on this one, A on the other one. Right, here's my A key and my D key. And on the right, I want to add some actuators. So I'm going to say my motion actuator. Right now, I recommend character motion for this one. So let's go character motion. And we're going to go to the right 0.1 blender units, right, when I go to the right. And let's just move this over here. Right, and I'll do the same thing. This is, and I should probably mention what this is. So this is right, if I can spell. And you know what? Let's do another actuator. And we'll do motion, and we'll do left. There's left motion, so we'll just connect this ones together. So left and right. And this will move -1 blender unit. Okay, that's enough. Let's try it out. So I'm going to go back into ortho mode, and I'm going to go P for play. And when I press D, I move to the right. And when I move A, I move to the left. Okay, this isn't what I want. Look, I got a bit of a problem. He kind of slides along the ground, right, left and right. So how do I make this guy change position now, right? So I want to kind of, when I move to the left, right, I also want to rotate him to the left, right? I want to rotate him to the left. How do I do that? Click A. When I click A, he rotates to what he's actually doing is he's doing rotation. Which way is he going to turn? The actual beast itself, right? Well, let's go back in here so I can show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to press escape. And if I look at it from the top, what I really want to do is I want to rotate across the x-axis this way, right? Like this, look. This way, right? When I want to go this way. Because then if I rotate across the x-axis, let me show you what that looks like. Rotate across the z-axis, I want to rotate him this way. That's what I want him to do. So I want to rotate him to that direction. And if I go this way, if I go to this part, I want to go rotate him in this direction when he's running. And the rest of the time when he's not doing anything, listen to what my words are. I always censor. I always want him to be idle, other than when I go this way or when I go this way, which means I have to do some animation, right? How do I do my animations? Do you guys remember? Oh, you guys forgot already. What was that? Let's do animation on other screens. We're going to go to, from game logic, we're going to go into default, right? Here's my default screen, right? I'm going to change my perspective view. I'm going to change back to perspective mode for this one so I can see what I'm doing, right? And what I want to do is I'm going to pull this guy down a little bit just so I can see where he's going to be positioned. Okay, on the bottom of my default view, I have this animation view here right now, right? What I want to do is I want to map my animation into different frames. This is my keyframe, my first keyframe, my 0 button. If you notice, I've got 250 frames down here on the bottom. On the bottom here, look, I've got from 1, right, to 250. There's 250 frames. This is way too many frames for me to have in here, guys, right? To keep it simple, we're going to cut this down to 30 frames. So I'm going to go from, an end is going to be 30. Just type in 30 in there. So now there's a little bit less frames so that you know what you're doing. Okay, in here, in order for me to capture my animation position, there's two things that I capture. I never want to animate his position. His position is not animating, only his rotation. All right? So what I need to do is I'm going to go into Object, right? And I'm going to go into Animation, right? And I'm going to insert a keyframe. When it asks me what keyframe I'm going to insert rotation only, the R, the rotation keyframe. When I do that, if you notice, on keyframe number 1, this is the first frame I'm at, I have a position for his idle state. That's his idle, keyframe 1, right? Okay, cool. Now, I've added in an animation, right? So when I go into my player, right, and I go down in here, there's this thing that says animation, right? I'm going to name this keyframe, this animation, right? I'm going to rename this thing, right, by going in here where it says player action. I'm going to rename this thing as idle. Okay, see that? Player animation idle. I'm naming my animation keyframe. Okay. I need to add another keyframe. I'm going to go to frame 2. So here's frame 2. And this time I'm going to rotate this dude, right, one way or the other, across the z-axis. So let's try it. So I'm going to go rotate R along the z-axis, Z, right? And if I go 90, he goes to this side. Press Enter. Right? So if you notice, he's rotated, so he looks, I'm looking now to my right. So this is going to be called right animation, right? And I'm going to put in a keyframe. I'm going to go Object, Animation, right? Of course I can't do it because I'm focused on the wrong thing. Let's try this again. So let's try this again. So Object. So if I capture animation, I won't be able to do anything. For Object, Animation, and then Insert Keyframe. This is on keyframe 2. Only rotation. Now, if you notice, I added in another keyframe, but the problem is because it's the same character, it's on this idle animation, right? See, it's still on this one set of animations called idle. Because I have two keyframes that I've got in here. I've got keyframe number 1. Let me use my scrubber here for a second so you see what I'm talking about. I got this way and then I go this way, and then I go if I go to keyframe number 1, I go there, and then keyframe number 2, I change directions. Right? Let me show that again. Idle, and then I'm running. Right? Now I want to go back to keyframe 2, right? And I want to rotate the other way. I want to rotate the other way. Okay? So I got a bit of a problem, right? Because I'm adding in a set of animations, right? And this is my animation in here, right? My animation. We're going to go to the animation editor in a second, the dope sheet, right? To show you how this is done, right? If I play my animation right now, I've got 30 frames. It's going to go like this. Pick, 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 pick. It's going to kind of rotate between one or the other. If I press play, right? It's going to go, and then it's going to be, it's going to see, you see it's going to flicker like that, right? So I've got one animation that goes to the front and one keyframe that goes to the other side, right? So how do I go all the way from idle, right? I want to go hit idle, so I want to go to, so this animation sequence is idle, right? Is what I call it, right? because the two keyframes are next to each other, there's a problem. If I go to the next keyframe, unless I'm going to choose another frame like way over here, like frame 10, as an example. If I go frame 10, and if I rotate this guy back to the way he was, so rotate across the z-axis, what was that? Yeah, let's see how it's going to be. If I go rotate across the z-axis 90, oh sorry, rotate across the z-axis minus 90, it's going to go back to idle and press enter, and then add a keyframe, object. Oh, I've got to have the proper thing selected. Object, animation, insert keyframe, and rotation. Right. Now, what's going to happen if I play this guy? Right. So I'm going to play him now. So up, 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 and this is bad. This is not what I want. But this is the right idea, but it's not the right thing that we want to do. So let's do a couple things. First of all, we're going to clear our keyframes. We're going to do this again so I can show you what to do. So first we're going to go into animation, right? First of all, I got to click on the first keyframe, which is keyframe 1. So here's our first keyframe. I'm going to go object, animation, and I'm going to clear keyframes. I'm going to go to frame 2, and I'm going to go objects, animation, and clear keyframes. And I'm going to go into, make sure I go into the right keyframe here. Object 10, object, animation, and then clear keyframes. If I want to clear all keyframes, like if you notice, this is my scrubber arm, right, on this thing. I can simply, if I click my my player, so I'm moving back into position 1, position 0, and if you notice, I can double click on this thing here, and how do I can unlink my action. Let me show you this thing. Here's my action, right? My player cube, and I've got no link. I've got no player anymore. No keyframes. I got no animation. So I want to build an action is what I want to do. So this is my ground. This is my cube 1, which would be labeled dirt. And this, I want to build an animation sequence. Okay, that's what I want to do. So I'm going to click on this guy again. Let's do it again. And this time, when I go to object, right, I want to go to animation, right? And I want to click on build action, or sorry, not bake action, but I want to, insert a keyframe for the first one again. Now this insert keyframe, as an example, is the rotation. So here's my rotation. So my rotation it sets up a default location for his rotation, right? So that's the first action, right? And then I want to rotate him one way or the other. So far this is his idle, right? His idle keyframe. So I want to say idle. Now what I want to do is I want to go into object, as an example, animation, and I want to bake my action. Okay. And if you notice, the start frame is 1 and the end frame is 1. I don't want to have any more actions. I'm going to have my bake data as my object, my pose, right? And I'm going to leave it as is and press OK. It's my bake action. Now if you notice, my action is called action. Look, here's my action. Okay, and I'm going to call this idle. Idle 2 comes up, right? And let me ask you this question. Where's my idle 1? If my idle 2 is coming up, how come this says idle 1? If I go idle by itself and rename this thing, it's got to be stored somewhere, is what the questions are. Well, the place you can see it is under my animation. So if you go click animation, right? Here's my location, my buffer, my action, all this kind of stuff. And what I want to do is, with this action bake, is it tells me all the locations, all the information for what I'm doing, right? So I've got my player, and inside there I have my idle action, and I've got my bake action. Okay, one more time. So if I want to take this away, if I press X, I can't take it away that way. If I go to, and this is the great thing about having this view, right? It gives me an additional menu, right? So here's my key. I can paste keyframes, I can sample my keyframes, I can clean my keyframes, I can do a bunch of different things in here. I can jump to keyframes and insert and snap and all that kind of stuff. What I really want to do, if I want to clean them up or get rid of them, right? I can just simply go here, and again, this is the same thing. This is my frame. I can do auto keyframing mode. But what I want to do is delete my keyframe again. I want to start from scratch, you know, or whatever. What's that? There's my keyframes gone, right? One thing I should do, because even though I'm in animation mode, is I want to change back to material so I can see this guy a little bit. So this is my dope sheet summary. So here he is, right? And I want to show you, this is on my 30 frames per second here. I'm going to bring this way up so you can see the keyframe logic here. This is what I'm going to add. If you notice, I'm using an F curve, which means the keyframe isn't linear, right? I can choose from an F curve to different kinds of ways of doing this thing, right? But I want to add a little animation that does different things. So the key thing is, if I go to key, and there's different options here. If I go keyframe type, right? If I go, there's different options here for deleting or duplicating keyframes or inserting keyframes. If I want to click insert keyframe, right? And I can say, look, all channels or only select channels in active group or whatever I want. Let's go only select channels, right? And on the left, which channel do I have, right? I can collapse channels or expand channels. If I collapse channels, right, I can expand channels. If I want to add a channel in there, so right now I don't have very many channels, right? I can ungroup my channels, I can group my channels, I can do all kinds of stuff that I want to do. But if you notice on my outliner, my player only has, right now, he's got a cube with two materials, an idle and a walk. Okay. So let's do this thing again. So I want to add keyframes to this particular area right here, right? So if I go key, right, and if I want to add a keyframe, insert keyframes, right now, insert keyframes where? So if I go insert keyframes to rotation only, right? Now look what happens. I got my player action, right? And right now it's only rotation. That's all he's rotation. So all he's keeping track of is rotation on frame 1. Okay, so this is my player action that I'm going to call idle. Lots of control. Here again, right? And now what I want is I don't want for my player action, I want to have multiple animations, right? That I want to keep track of. This one? That's a good question. Because right now, and I want to expand my channels here for a second. Sorry. You're correct, sir. Because right now, it's showing me I've got my, it's only on my animation, it's only on my rotation. Right, that's my channel that I got going on right now. Okay, so now how do I, this is on keyframe number 1. I want to add another keyframe. It doesn't matter where I add it in, but I want to add it in probably on keyframe number 2. So I'm going to move to frame 2, and I'm going to rotate everything the way I want. So rotate across the z-axis, and again, it's 90 degrees. So it's going to go pointing the other way, and enter. So I made a change. So this is frame 2, right? I want to add a keyframe. So I'm going to insert a keyframe across and call it rotation. Right, there it is. Now this is the thing. If you notice where I'm at, I'm in keyframe number 2, and if I play, I go from 1 to 2, and it flickers like that. Right? This animation I've labeled idle. Now I want another one of these. How do I add a second one is my question to you. You don't. No matter how much you do it, what I want to keep track of is which position I'm moving to. So if I go to idle, I've called it idle because I'm thinking in my mind, I want to go into from idle to run, to do this or do that, right? But what I really want to do is flip from one side to the other. That's all I wanted to do really, really quickly. without a smooth transition. If I want smooth transition, if I want to actually show him moving, then I have to move to a different state. All right, so that's one. Let's move to my keyframe number 3, and this time I'm going to rotate him back. So I'm going to rotate, I'm going to clear the rotation. So I'm going to go minus, rotate across the z-axis, right, to 0. Actually, let's try that again. So keyframe number 3, rotate along the x-axis to 90, or sorry, minus 90 again. So I want to make sure that I see this guy a little clearer, because I'm going to get confused in a second. Rotate across the z-axis minus 90. So rotate across the z-axis minus 90. So he's back to normal. And then rotate across the z-axis minus 90 again. Right, there it is. So he's going the other way now. Okay, and then I'm going to insert keyframes for the eye and plus rotation. So now I've got my 3 positions. So position number 1, he's in idle state. Position number 2, he's running to the right. Position number 3, he's running to the left. It's instead of idle, which I've called it, we're just going to call this my action sequence. So player action. Right, that's what this thing is. And now when I go back into my, from here, I'm going to go back into my game logic, right? So here's my game logic. And I don't care, like right now he's not positioned properly. If I go P for play, right, it's showing him on his, on that one sequence, because we're sitting at frame 3. So sorry, let me just go back to frame 1. We'll go back to default, and I'm going to go back to frame 1, frame 0. Go back into my game logic, and now he looks the right way. Right, I'm going to go back into camera mode, right, and so here he is on my frame logic. Okay, now, so now this is what's going to happen. When I press, when I'm always going to be using my action, right, to rotate, to show my front position, right, I'm going to use that always sensor. So I'm going to say add sensor, always. Here's my always sensor. When I'm always going to be idling unless I press my right or left keys. So I'm going to add my actuator. I'm going to add in a action. And now we have player action. Here's my action. Right? Here it is. And if you notice, I can start from whatever my player action is. Start frame is 1. End frame is 1. Right? That's what it's going to do. So basically from 1 to 1. That's what's going to happen. He's not going to go anywhere.
The one you made is action or item?
Action. Just renamed it. There we go. So if I press play, right, he's always going to be in his basic action, but he's only going to be in frame 1. Okay, good. Now, so this is idle on the action side. Idle. Now, what I want to do is when I press right, to go this way, he's going to walk to the right, which means he's going to turn from a positioning. He's going to turn this way. He's going to rotate this way to the left. So we're going to try. We have to do some trial and error here. Okay. So let's see how this works. So I'm going to add another action. So when I press the D key, right, this is all good. It's going to go to here. And in my actuator, I'm going to add another action actuator, which I'm going to position up higher. After I do this, this is going to go to the right, right? So he's going to walk right, okay? And I'm going to just move this guy up until he's right next to the right. I'm going to pull another one of these lines out until he connects to the action walk right. Okay, the action is going to do, he's still going to do an action, right? But what he's going to do, instead of starting at a frame 1 and going to frame 1, he's going to go to frame 2 and end at frame 2. That's all that's going to happen. Okay. I'll do one more action. I'm going to add another action. Right, there it is. And this one will be walk left. Walk left. He's going to still do an action. And it's going to go from frame 3 to frame 3, and I'm going to pull this one up a little higher, and it's going to connect. So when I click my right button, it's going to go one way, my left button is going to go the other way. I may have to flip these around to fix them in a second. Okay, so press play, and if I press my D key, he runs and drops. I'm going to fix that in a second. And when I press my A key, he's still there, right? But see how he actually is moving there and he drops, right? Because he fell off. What's really happening? Let's see what's really happening here. Okay, so I'm going to press P for play, and I'm going to write my D key. Right, my D key, what it does is now I've rotated my entire guy, so he's going off screen. Look, he's moving in the other direction. Watch, let's try that again. And the same thing with this guy. I'm going to rotate him, right? I'm going to go P for play, rotate to the other side. He rotates, but he also now moves that in that direction as well. So that's a problem. I have an issue with that, rotating my guy, right? So I've translated the guy so it's rotating to the left. Because I'm doing some animation to get that. So what's happening is when I'm animating him, he physically moves to another direction. He's moving to the other direction now, right? So how do I change that so I restrain him or constrain his movements so that he stays in one place, right? So this is working. I like my animations working, but the problem that I'm having is he's changing position, but he's not. I'm moving him. He's physically flipping directions, and I don't have. He's not moving. I'm applying the movement to him, but I'm actually what I really want to do is apply the movement to something else. So I'm showing you this because this is you'd be forgiven to think this is the right way to do things, right? When it comes to moving the whole cube, yeah, I want to rotate the cube, but I don't want my position, my cube, to be dependent on what my keys are doing. I may have to add an empty that my cube is following, right? So when my cube rotates, who cares, right? It's going to rotate, but my empty is the one that's going to move left and right. It has nothing to do with my cube. You follow me? Because if I start thinking about my cube going left and right, it'll go left and right, but the problem what will happen is it'll go off the screen. A couple things I need to do to make sure to prove this to you. All right? One is I need to add another actuator, which is a constraint. Here's my constraint, right? And if you notice with my constraint, what I wanted to do is it's going to be a location constraint, and the limit is going to be across this axis. So my y-axis can have 0 location, right? So I'm going to go location on the y-axis, right? And so it's going to be a constrain y. Constrain y. There it is. And it's 0 and 0. Okay, what does this mean? It means that if I up this, kind of put it in the middle, right? For my constraint, let me put this one down like this. No, I did the wrong thing. Put this up here. And move that up again. Here's my constraint. I want to constrain both of my walk right and walk left so I can't go off the deep end. Right? Let's try this out. So I'm going to go bum, bum, bum. I'm going to hook into my constraint. I'm going to hook this one also into my constraint. So I cannot go off the y-axis. Let's try this out. Press P for play, right? And now I'm going to go D, and then you see it's trying to get off the Y, trying to throw me off, and it can't. I go A, and it's trying to throw me off. So now I can change directions. Hey, but how come I'm not going back to my idle state? I'm not going back. I've been in my idle state one time, but I can never go back to my idle state again. That's an issue for me. And the reason why is because my idle state needs to be fired up all the time. Okay, let's try this up. So there's my idle state. I go D, right? And then I go the other way. And now it's ignoring my my other stuff when I turn this on. So when I do this always, right? It always does it. If I click tap, let's try this out again. P, right? I go here, and then I go this way, and it stops me. Okay, so that's no good. If I increase if I skip one, right? Or if I turn this to off, skip is the amount of skipping, watch. I go one way, I go the other way, and I'm stopped. I will never go back to my idle state, because my idle state, even though it's I don't touch anything, when nothing is happening, I want to go back to my other state. It's not firing up because my idle state doesn't work while I've got these pressed. We're going to fix that later on. But just things to note. Okay. Nice ideas, but won't work without us doing this properly. Okay, so how do we take this same logic idea and put it on something so that way it can rotate my guy? I think the rotation's got to stay put, but my motion's got to leave. I can't move my cube through this way. I've got to move my other object around and leave my cube in place, right? And in fact, if anything, I want to parent my cube to whatever object I'm moving, right? So how do I do that? So first of all, let's take off the motion. So motion gone, and I also want to do my left motion gone. So that's the first thing. I want to constrain my walking, my left and right walking, so that it doesn't go into the Y gutter. I don't want to make it go anywhere else. If I press P for play now, and if I turn by one way or the other, right, I can't turn because I don't have any kind of rotation or movement at all when I press P for play. So walk left and walk right is there, right? And again, it goes from frame 3 to frame 3. This one goes from frame 2 to frame 2, right? And if I kill this one, so I'll just take away this action here. So I'm going to kill this one for a second and press play, right? Then it'll flip one way or the other, no problem. It'll flip either way. As soon as I put the other action in place, though, right? If I put this other action in place, once I put this always in, there's two things that can happen. One, the always won't work, right? And I'll show you this in a second. So I'll press play, so one way or the other way, but it never comes back to always again. It doesn't come back there. The other thing I can do is I can use a delay, a timer, right? So when I have nothing gone, like I have nothing pressed, if I'm not pressing right or left, the timer will go off, right? And I can also set up a way of detecting if I'm right or left, right? As an example, and then if I'm not doing anything else, I'm not pressing a key, right? Not pressed, then you know what happens. If I'm not, and remember see these controls, these ands, right? I can add an additional controllers, like for example, there's NOR and exclusive NOR and an OR and NAND to add additional gates to help me out as well. But that's not really my problem. My problem is I need to move. I don't want to rotate what I'm moving. I want to parent something else. Okay, so let's zoom in here and do that. Go in here, right? And I want to follow something that I'm moving. And it's going to probably be in the middle of my cube. So I'm going to right click on my cube. I'm going to shift S, sorry, let's go back into my, I got to do it in a different view. I'm right here. I'm going to turn on my, I'm toggling my control, right? And I'm going to keep my origin, right? That's important. But what I want to do is I'm going to shift S, and I want to do cursor to selected. So my cursor is inside the middle of my object. See? There's my cursor. Now inside the middle of my object, that's the thing that my little guy is going to follow, right? He's in my object. So everywhere my little thing goes, the guy is going to move too. So I'm going to go Shift A, and I'm going to add in. Now I could add an actual object like a sphere or something like that if you wanted to. Doesn't matter. Like here's my let's make it a cylinder or something like that. Let's make it so it doesn't collide. It could be anything, right? Let's make it a UV sphere. Okay, now a UV sphere is too big, right? Since it's sitting inside my cube, let's make it a little smaller. There we go. And now it's also going to be invisible and with no, like right now we're going to see it, right? But in game view, we're not going to see a damn thing. When a game is on, we're not going to see nada, all right? And what I want to do is I want to say this. I want to say parent my cube to my sphere, right? I'm going to say I want to go object parent, right? Parent object, right? So my sphere is my player now, right? My sphere is the thing that's moving, not my player. That's the thing that's going to move around, right? And if you notice, it's nested in there. So my player's inside my sphere, right? And there he is, right? We'll call the sphere an avatar. Right? Here's my avatar, and my player is inside my avatar. And inside my player, I have a little bit of animation. We have a little bit of an action. Okay, cool, cool. So now I want to add in logic to my sphere, but we want to make it invisible. So first of all, I'm going to go back up to my sphere. Right. Here it is. There's my sphere. I'm going to go back into object mode, and that I've got my sphere selected. I'm going to make sure that I got my sphere selected there. Right. And what I want to do is in physics mode, I want to make it invisible. I also want to make it so that my physics type is no collision. So otherwise, if I have a collision inside my sphere, it's going to bounce around like crazy inside my character. Right? All right, now I want to go back into I'm going to tab out of it. Okay, so here's my sphere again. And if I go back into logic, if I go back into game logic, right, my avatar is the one that's selected. I got to be careful here because even though my avatar is selected, my avatar is not my game cube, right? Here's my, if I click my cube, right, can I get to my cube? Here's my avatar, right? So if I select my sphere, right, my avatar is still selected. My player is still selected. My player has different logic. Here's my player. This is my sphere, right, my avatar. So my avatar is going to pull my character around. So let's add some stuff into my avatar. So I'm going to go my keyboard sensor, and I'm going to put the same kind of keyboard. So I'm going to put an A, call A lowercase a this time. Let's make it different. Actually, it doesn't matter because it's part of a different. I could, but let's just leave it the way it is. It just takes 2 seconds. And let's go into keyboard. We'll do a D key. And we'll go D. And now we'll add in a couple of motion actuators. So we'll go motion. So we don't have those, we'll go character motion. Right? And put them in there. And we'll move to the right. Another one. And we'll go motion. And we'll do character motion again. And we'll move to the left. Let's make sure that's correct. Yes. And these motions, we'll call them, we'll call this right. And we'll call this left. Okay, and we'll pull this across. So they do both things now, right? Okay, so let's check this out. I'm going back into object mode and press P. Here's my guy. I go right, and I go, pew. What happened? What happened? What happened? So let's try this again. So I'm going to go into camera mode, and I go P for play. I can't see him, and I go left. It goes, pow. What happened? Well, it's all part of the physics, is the key, right? I got to make sure that my avatar itself, like the actual avatar that I'm following, which is this little guy here, and if I pull this guy out, you see how the guy moves across too? Because they're parented. One is parented to the other, right? So go back to the side, go to physics, no collision, right, from a physics perspective. And what I'm doing is, and the reason why it's doing that is, if I change this to simple motion, so I move this to the right for a second, and I go left from character motion to simple motion, and I move this to the left. Now, the reason why it's doing this is because I've got my my collisions on too. So I go parent, and then he's gone. Look, see how he's gone? Watch. I'll put him in the middle so you can see what's going to happen to him. P. Pow! Why is it doing that? Well, there's a couple reasons. First of all, let's unparent the guy and show you what I'm talking about here. This is a sphere I've made, not an empty, right? So here's my sphere, right? And he's inside this object. One sphere is inside this thing. It's not an empty, it's a sphere, right? So what I could do is go into edit mode, right? Select all, and then X everything, all the vertices, right? So now I have, effectively I have an empty. Same thing as doing the same thing. Go back out, I still have an avatar. And now when I go P, he's go pow, he's out of there. He flies across the screen. Well, a good way to understand that is to go back to my my avatar, undo, bring back my sphere, right? And what I want to do is going to go to Object, and I'm going to go to a Parent, and I'm going to clear parent. There's my parent. So now I can separate this guy away, right? Move this guy away from my parent. So this is my guy, right? Here's my guy. Look at him. And I go press P, and both of them are gone. Like in a flash. Both of them just fly away. Let's see what's going on here. So P, just fly away. What's going on? How come this is happening? Right? If I go back over here and I drop this from a large height, both of them are going to disappear. They're gone. Well, they're still parented, right? So I'm going to go Object, right? Parent. I need to declare parent on this one. Object, Parent, clear parent. Okay, now what happens? Let me just pull this guy back over here so he doesn't fall off the ground. P, he falls down. No problem. Here's my parent, right? This guy here. And let's bring him into, let's make him visible again and add him, give him some regular collisions, like some kind of dynamic collisions. Let's add him in. So boom, he falls, the other thing falls. No problem. Well, the problem is that when I want to pull this guy along behind, I want to pull this guy behind this guy, right? So if I press P for play, and if I press A, right, first of all, they're moving in the wrong directions. So A and D, that's a problem. So let's correct that motion. So my A key should move to the left. I just did it the other way around. And my D key should move to the right. So that's the first problem. And if I press P, play, I move this way, then I move this way. If you notice, the cube actually moves both ways, and eventually it'll push this guy into oblivion. That's not what I want. Or this sphere, if I'm saying too. So now if I parent them again, let's parent this. Do me the favor of parenting for a second, watch. So if I parent this one, I parent to this one. And I press P for parent, not P for play. If I press Control P for parent, and I say parent to the object, and then I press P, right? One goes through and disappears, right? Now if you notice, this guy here, right, and this guy here, this is a character from a character physics perspective, and this one is a dynamic character, right? If I make this guy so he has no collision, he's outside the character now. And if I press P for play, he's good. Now if I press A, he'd be gone. Even though I can bring him back. This guy's got independent movement now. He can move right and left, and no problem. But the problem is that when I go P for play, and I go this way, depending on how strong my my motion is, he's rotating. Let's try this again. So I'll do it slower for you guys to see it. P for play. I'm just barely touching the key. Barely touching, and he's going to be flying. Why? Well, he's trying to follow. Right? He's trying to follow an object that has, even if visible or invisible, he's trying to follow this thing. Okay, let's do it one more time. Shift A. I'm going to add in an empty. I'm adding an empty. I can also add an armature. Armatures are interesting as well. That's another way to do it. So here's my armature. Okay, so here's my armature. And I'm going to position this on top of the player's head, like this. So here, I'm going to kind of zoom in here. And here's my armature. And my armature, right, here's my armature's on top. Now, we haven't done rigging yet, but this is the first piece of the pie. Right, so here's my armature. It's going to appear at the top. Right, if I look on the front for my armature, it looks like there's something sticking out of his head. So front. Front ortho mode. And then go to camera ortho. Right? And when I press, now the problem is, you see, I've got this guy parented, and I want to copy. I want to copy my stuff here. I want to copy my logic. So if I go to Object, copy logic bricks, and then go right click on this top object, and go Object, Game. Right. I've selected both of them. First one and then the second one, right?
Yeah.
So first one and then the second one, or do I copy bricks from the other one? I don't know. I can't remember how to do this now. Object, Game, copy logic bricks. Yeah. So if I keep this one here, just my armature. Let me see my this one. Oh no, it's the other way around. It's the other way around, my friend. So I'm gonna go here. There. So I'm going to go this, and then Object, Game, copy logic bricks. That's good. And then what I want to do is here. So now I want to get rid of this thing. So I'm going to go X to get rid of him. And now it relieves this guy. But this is the one that I want him to follow. So it's this one is going to follow my armature. And my armature is just like this bone, right? That's an example. That's always invisible, right? That has no collision and is invisible, right? And if I go Object or Control P to parent to armature. Now it says armature deform, armature with empty groups, right? If I go bone, Control P to bone, or one of those things is fine too. Right now, if I go press P for play, and I press A, he flies. And it's the same reason why he's flying, whether it's one way or the other, because simple motion or character motion, this 0.1 point, right? I'm getting this guy to follow, and it's huge in terms of location change, right? The location doesn't stop moving. Like it's almost like, from my keyboard perspective, I only want to do a tap. I never want to do this stuff over and over again. Let's try this out again. See if we go A, and then there you go. See how it works? A little bit slower, and then, but he floats, right? Look how that happens. Look, take a look, guys. So there, and then back. Once I start motion, I can stop him, but it's almost like I got to tap twice. This way, and then when I stop him, I have to stop him the other way. So it stops him the other way unless I tell what to do. Which means, let's just hit the armature first by itself. So here's my armature, right? And it looks like I've got my logic bricks, and now I'm going to add in my sensor, my always sensor, right? Which does a couple things, right? One is that I'm going to add in motion, right? Which is 0. I want to stop. I'm going to see if I can. I'm going to kind of, actually, not motion is not what I want to do. I want to add. I want to stop the guy from moving, right? So maybe I can do it with motion, like a negative motion. So basically, one is or damping, if I'm not wrong. I want to add in some damping. I wonder if I can do that with character motion. Well, let's try it. So if I go character motion, this is to the right. Is it to the right? A key. That's to the left. I got this wrong. So A keys to the left, and there is no damping, but let's see if I can change the names of these things. So I'm going to go, this one will be right, this one will be left. That's the first thing. So this is right, and that's left. I'm going to change this to character motion as well. I should probably add some dampening to the floor too. That might do it as well. So here's my, what I could do is I could click on the actual floor itself. So I'm going to go kind of out of this one, go here, and from a property perspective, go to my property for my floor. That might solve it for us too. Like for example, on my physics options, when I press it, I have friction of 0.5. I could increase my my dampening, right? So and also, you know, what else might fix this thing? My world. If I increase my world jump to 30, my gravity. So if I go P, and then that's kind of slow things down, and I can increase my go back to my world, my thing, and I can change my friction. Change my friction up to, let's say to 2. See how that works. And let's try, that's not really effective, let's try dampening. So I'm going to dampen my guy a little bit. So, yeah, that's not enough. Let's put my dampening up to 1. Kind of doesn't stop my motion. If the more I tap, the more he falls down, which is not what I really wanted to do. And I wonder if I can increase my friction even more than that, like way up there. So let's go there. And how about my character friction for himself? Like the guy, he's moving around. And you know what? I also want to put his dampening right up too. Let's see if that does it. No. And let's increase my friction up there as well to way high. So lots of friction for my character. And it could also be because I need to add in some colliders with this dude. So let's try going here and adding some collision bounds to the actual object itself. P. Slower, but the more I tap, the more it adds. So it's almost like he's on a slippery slope for what we want to do. Now I'm going to fix this next time we get together because I'm timing out right now. But one thing we want to do before we go is to show you what it looks like on the character model. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to add a sensor. I'm going to add a keyboard sensor. I'm going to save this thing. I'm going to upload it to GitHub, by the way, so we have everything. My keyboard sensor, I'm going to add a space bar. And when I click my space key, I want it to jump. So I'm going to add my motion. So I'm going to go add actuator, motion, and here's my simple motion. I'm going to change this to character motion. I'm going to click jump. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of connect them together. Right? And I'm going to move back into my default window and go back into my 0 for my guy. So this is what my camera would look like when I'm playing. So here he is. He's falling. And then what I can do is he's running in different directions. If I press my space bar, he not jumping. He not jumping at all. How about them apples? But he does move around. The gravity can kill him? Is that what you think it is? I don't know. Let's see what happens with this guy when I do this. When I press P or space bar to jump. If I look at my armature logic bricks for a second, and we'll fix this all. Not a problem. My space bar is there, and I've clicked jump. I'm using character motion, character motion, character motion. And you know, let's make this guy visible, my armature. And when I press play, I want to see what happens to him. Okay, and let's check to see if I can. Of course, I'm running out of time. But let's try and see if I do this again. So press play and then my space bar to jump. And we'll fix it the next day. Because you know what? I'm not going to, on the z-axis, let's try the z-axis. I'll increase my position by 2 on the z-axis and see if I fall. So it'll position, and then press the space bar, and it'll fly into space, man. How about them apples? And let's try this again. And then press the space bar, and he'll still fly into space. Oh, he comes down, though. Hold on. And he's going to bounce as many times as he can. How about them apples? She'll keep bouncing forever, right? And let's take away the jump property and see what happens then. So boom, and he presses it. Hey, and he's going to jump forever and ever. Once I'm jumping, man, am I jumping. It's like I'm a jumping bean, right? And he's going to jump off the edge of the world. So let's go back into my default view, and we'll go into camera mode, and we'll press play. And there he is, and I press jump, and then he's woo, and he's going to jump forever and ever. And even if I press P and press a little jump, it all depends on how much I jump. You can see that it's got some pretty smooth action going on. So we're almost there. We got to fix this problem with the jumping. The great thing is that he can't go off the screen. Like even if he can't go and land on his thing there, right? So he's going to go forever. But we're good. We're getting closer to the mechanic that I want. What I wanted to do was make sure that when he jumps, right, he actually has character motion jump. All right. Let's add some. Just make him a character for a second. Press P for play, just for giggles here. Let's see what happens. And that's interesting because I didn't see a darn thing. So press P. Yeah, he gone. Like something is forcing this guy to jump up into forever and ever, right? Let's make him he's an actor. Let's make this guy a ghost. Maybe instead of what I got to do is make him into a ghost. The armature I'm talking about, even though they're parented. Because right now I can make him invisible, but from whatever reason, it's seeing him as, if we have to go dynamic, make him into a ghost. Yeah, it's going to fall forever. And the reason why is because he's parented to the other object, so the other object is a ghost too. So if I go, my object, he's a character, and he's got collision bounds, and so does this thing, my ground. But because I'm parenting them together, and I press play, he's going to fall into oblivion. So that can't be. It can't be a dynamic object as a ghost. And if I make him a rigid object, right, it'll be the same thing. He'll fall into oblivion. If I take away the ghost piece, he's going to fly into the air, right, because they're colliding, right? The other opportunity I have is to physically move this guy. So I'll move this guy down, separate from this guy, and press P. It's going to move forever in through the objects. Watch, phew, pew, right? No matter how far I put this guy's apart. Look, if I bring this guy up, he'll just move right through. Oh, one of the things I wanted to show you is one thing. From a physics perspective, from a world perspective, one thing you can do is the substeps you can tape. You want to increase the substeps up into amazing number of substeps. The reason why is because you want to when it comes to check how many times you can pass through walls like that. If you don't increase this, then what happens is even his motion will make him pass through walls, which is a bad thing. Anyways, we'll fix this when we get back. There are obvious issues with the armature and everything else. One thing what we want to do is, and what I wanted to accomplish today was we could create almost like this 2D scene, and we were very close. We just got to figure out what the problem is. Clear parent. And then what happens is if we fall, he'll fall now. Right. So here's my parent. Let's get I'm just going to move him out of the way for a second. So if he falls, there he is. And what we have right now is his motion that he can turn right and left, which is a really cool thing. It's a matter of getting that motion down, and then at the same time, when we turn right and left, he actually moves the way we want him to move. Okay, that's it for me today.